What's going on, everybody? In this video, we're gonna go over some different ways to improve ankle mobility, not just with dorsiflexion, but with all the other motions that the ankle offers. I see a lot of things on the internet where the only focus is on dorsiflexion, or where you're bringing your toes up towards the shin. Very important motion for things like squatting and going up and down stairs. However, we have other motions like plantarflexion. We have tilting of the ankle itself, so inversion and eversion. We even have rotation through the whole complex, which involves the knee, in tibial internal and external rotation. Other important things to focus on when you're trying to work with the ankle, of course, we have things like calf tightness or gastroc or soleus tightness. The foot, there's a lot of stuff that goes on with the foot, as well as big toe mobility. You know, your ability to dorsiflex or extend the big toe, also important and can correlate with, increased or decreased ankle mobility. Now, if you stay tuned to the end of the video, I'll talk about whether or not I even think any of these things are that important to work on, or who really should focus on it most versus others that maybe it's not gonna give them a huge benefit. So let's get into the first one. We're gonna do ankle dorsiflexion. All right, to start, what we're gonna do is more of a half kneeling. So I'm on one knee, dorsiflexion drill where I'm trying to get the knee to the wall. Now this can kind of double as an assessment. Basically, I'll get my foot maybe a fist width or 3-4 inches away from the wall. And what I'm gonna try to do is bend forward. I wanna get my knee to the wall without lifting my heel up. So some things that will limit the motion, commonly it's gonna be tension in the back here. Now, it could be some pinching through the front of the ankle as well. So definitely don't push into the pinching. We're just trying to work on creating nice little length through here. Now, one thing I always want to point out is that when people do this, they tend to like over shift in or out, or basically their foot will pronate, it'll flatten, which makes it look like they have the motion, but really they're just collapsing the foot and they're not getting it through the talus here. So again, I go from here, whatever distance I can manage, I lean forward, and you can see I'm putting my body weight through my knee to help me drive that forward there. You can use kettlebells and other things like that as well. So pretty simple, half kneeling dorsiflexion. We're using a wall as a guide and or a target, if you will. And nice to get that motion there. See how this feels, especially before you do some squats. Okay, now we're gonna jump into plantarflexion. I just realized that none of these videos actually show my face, so it's kind of weird, but let's move on. So plantarflexion is the opposite of dorsiflexion. So toes aren't gonna come up, they're gonna go this way. Very underrated. We see this is limited in quite a few people. So one of the simplest ways that I can start to work on this is I'll go on my knees like this. I'm gonna tuck my feet under. And all I do is I sit back, okay? And then if I need a little bit more, I will push down on my heels as I start to sit back into the ankle there. So you should feel this pull through the front. Just like with dorsiflexion, we don't wanna feel a pinch, in the back of the ankle now. So if you're seeing the pinch, either with the first one or the plantarflexion, we could be dealing a little bit more with some ankle impingement, not something you want to keep pushing into. Now, this is just a passive stretch. I just work myself into it just like that. Now, if I wanted to do maybe a little bit more of a guided stretch, I would do is kind of take my heel, take my other hand, and then I just get my foot out of the way there. I pull down, okay? Pretty easy. Pull down. All right, now we're gonna work on inversion, eversion. So inversion is lifting the inside of the foot up. Eversion is the opposite, outside of the foot. Now, what a lot of people do when they work on these drills is there's excessive motion through their hips. The knees start to come out, where this looks like I'm doing that motion, but a lot of it's coming from my hips. So what I'll have people do is they'll put the yoga block here. So squeeze the yoga block, and then the focus is literally just through the feet. So out and in. So if I want to invert, I kind of tell myself I am pushing the outside of my foot into the ground to then lift the inside up. And then if I want to flip, I really push the inside as I lift. So those that struggle with this, I will have them actually throw, like, let's say eversion is a really hard thing for people. I might have them take a towel or some sliders and just wedge it in their foot like that. And then as they build up the sliders, their foot's kind of propped into that position. And then I just take the sliders away, and then their foot is magically in that position. With these, we're just in and out, just trying to control that motion. So when I go in, I'm using muscles in the inside of the leg, and then I'm feeling a stretch on the outside, and then vice versa. When I go in, I feel the muscles on the outside of the leg, and I feel stretch on the inside. Okay, lastly, we're gonna do tibial internal and external rotation. So internal, external. Just like with eversion, inversion, I wanna make sure that there's not a lot of movement through my knees or my hips. So I use a slider for stuff like this. So what I do is I just slide in, internal rotation, hold for a brief second, and then I try to go a little bit further, and then I let it relax, and I can go to the outside. So I'm just spinning the foot like on a clock dial, just in and out. So we're gonna probably have a little bit more difficulty with internal rotation. So when we do this, we don't want to lift the foot up, keep the foot flat. It's always, a tendency for people to try to get more motion by cheating. It's just, we can't help but try to get as much as we can, and then we end up losing it somewhere else. So just focusing on that area as much as you can. So switch to the other side, and do both at the same time, doesn't really matter. So out and in. So that's tibial internal and external rotation. There you go. So a little bit of an ankle mobility routine. So just very basic, covering each motion: dorsiflexion, plantarflexion, inversion, eversion, and a little bit of tibial rotation. So I said earlier in the video, it's like, is this important? Do we need to spend a lot of time on this? So my personal feelings are, some people genetically just have tighter ankles. They're not gonna have tons of dorsiflexion. So naturally, it's gonna limit things like squatting. They're gonna have to modify how they squat, or maybe a back squat isn't the best option for them. And I don't think that any level of stretching or mobility or treatment, frankly, is gonna change all that much. You might get a few degrees, but the second you stop doing these drills, you're probably gonna go right back to normal. So why are these beneficial? Well, there are situations where somebody has a big discrepancy of motion between one side and the other. Those are situations where I do think working on these drills can be helpful, because it's, we're trying to even it out, if you will. Oftentimes you're gonna see this as a result of some kind of injury or surgery or things like that, where you get a lot of benefit or improvement in a short amount of time just from doing a little bit of that type of mobility drill. But I think this can also, if you have a leg day and you're gonna do squats and lunges and things like that, if you incorporate this as a warm-up, it does give you some temporary changes. And I think that's where people feel like, oh, I've improved my dorsiflexion, where it's like, usually it's like stretching in general. You get a temporary improvement of motion, but then it typically is going to tighten up or go back to what it's used to. So these can be a good benefit to do as part of a warm-up. So you work on your dorsiflexion, you create motion through the ankles, and then you go and you try to do some squats. You'd be surprised that, oh wow, I can sink into that hole a little bit better. I'm not feeling as much restriction around the calves. Working the ankles in this plane, the frontal plane, with eversion and inversion, you might find that things like plyometrics and jumping and cutting actually feel a little bit easier. So there's a lot to this. There's many other exercises. These are just kind of the quickest ones I could think of. There's other motions of the foot and the ankle that I mentioned earlier. You got forefoot, you got rear foot, all of these different things. So don't try to complicate it. Just do the basics. Try these, spend about 5 minutes, 10 minutes on this, see what you think. If you got any questions, just hit me up in the comments. If not, I'll see you on the next video.